My book was actually gifted to me. It is Power Up. It is how Japanese video games gave the world an extra life. And I got a note in here from somebody. It says, "Dearest Spencer, I hope you like RPGs. Your fellow Dragon Quest Tensei Emblem Odyssey Trigger of Time, Teddy from Majority."
Sounds
that
like
was
a
you.
swell dude. That Majority.
Is that your certified title?
Let's see if I can even
Yeah.
do it again. Dragon Tensei Emblem of Time. I missed something.
Warrior?
Trigger of Time.
That's what
Odyssey Trigger of Time.
Where did Odyssey come from?
Mario Odyssey.
I guess.
RPG.
That's
Could be Etrian Odyssey.
Yeah,
it's probably
probably
Etrian, but I was like.
And then
Mario.
I also have a note that took me a second to realize what it said because the handwriting is a little sloppy. That's you.
Yeah.
But it says, "Keep being Banana Boy." Bananas Boy.
What the fuck why did I even say that? Was that a joke?
I don't know.
Did we have a Banana Boy joke at the show at some point? Like a month or something?
during the
I don't
vacation.
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
I like that one.
But that's what it says. So I'm
Was that a
reading it.
Dolly Parton joke?
I don't
Banana Boy?
recall anything in
Did
Dolly
we have a
World.
Banana Boy. What the fuck did Banana Boy come from? It's amazing.
Bring back Banana Boy.
Hashtag bring back Banana Boy.
But there you go. You two signed it when we were out in Gatlinburg. So it holds a special place in my heart. And also holds a special place because it's about video games and specifically Japanese video games. It's written by Chris Kohler with a foreword by Shuhei Yoshida, who is the president of Sony Interactive Entertainment Worldwide Studios at the time of writing. The book is about Japan's influence on video games and how they basically rescued gaming in the early 80s to bring us what we have today. It's interesting because I think the book, if I had to guess, the chapters of the book were written at different times and probably just consolidated into a collection, but it's not really specifically said. But you can tell that the chapters were written in different times because they'll say like what the current gaming landscape is up to that point, and it varies in different chapters. So usually it seems to be that it's around 2004, but there are chapters that are like 2016. There's some that seem like way later than that. So the references are a little bit different depending on the chapters, but it starts out with just the beginnings of the Atari and what was going on, and then its transformation over to Japan and what they were pumping out. And then it moves to stuff that I'm more interested in, which is like Donkey Kong, Nintendo getting their start. Then it moves into JRPGs, which I have some thoughts on, and then it gets into just the more business aspect of it. So one interesting thing I found about the book is it's a little bit jumbled. Like it doesn't quite have like a through line that I was looking for. It's more like, what do I think about the way that they handle used games, and then the next chapter will be like, what about music? And it's just like that's why I think it might be like articles, like long outputs that he did over the years, because the guy works for and I forgot the name, but he works for an online publication, but I can't remember what it was. But anyway, it may just be stuff like that. But so I'll be honest, I completely skipped the music one. I got like 2 pages into the music one. I was like, I really don't care. And so I just skipped over that. And I read everything else. And okay, I really like that he goes into detail of certain games. So he explains Donkey Kong and Mario in ways that help you understand how they expanded storytelling in video games, because before Donkey Kong it was more about just getting a high score on some random game, and there were quote unquote cutscenes, but they weren't so much about story or just kind of introducing characters. Whereas Donkey Kong had like a 3-act structure to the game, even though it was very, very simple, but it was the Donkey Kong's on the top and Jumpman is at the bottom, and you have to navigate up, and then eventually you knock him off his pedestal, and there you go. There's your story. And then Mario had its own little story, and it grew from there into Super Mario 3, Super Mario World. I like that it takes you through that journey. I was a little bit disappointed when I got to the JRPG segment, because I felt like that was the real like meat and potatoes of the book, and where it shines. And you could tell, it actually became pretty clear early on in the book, but you could tell that the author has a pretty strong bias towards Japanese culture. Definitely a bit of an otaku, especially when he starts talking about Final Fantasy. You can also tell in some of these the age that, like I said, you can tell that he wrote this around 2004 for especially this RPG one, because he had like a 2, maybe 4-page dissertation of Final Fantasy 11.
Yeah. And
his fandom of it. Mm-hmm. And there's like certain people that will play that game, and you can just kind of tell like this is his thing, and he was really big on it. And he talks about Final Fantasy 7 a lot. So I'm kind of, as I'm reading it, like piecing together who this person is and what his like gaming regimen is. And you can tell because he talks a lot about Final Fantasy and almost nothing about Dragon Quest. Like it has its own section, but it pretty much ends at 3, and he barely talks about any of it. And then he moves on. And obviously, because of the time, Dragon Quest 5 and 6 were not even released here yet. So he probably never got a chance to play those because of he's in America, and that just maybe wasn't his priority. And he was more into the Final Fantasy stuff, so he put more effort into doing that than actually getting like a translated or a Japanese version of any of those games. So his focus was Final Fantasy, and particularly 7, which isn't surprising based on the time. I love that he had like 5 pages of Final Fantasy 7 of all the different amazing things, and they got the storytelling, and they moved it from the Super Nintendo to PS1. And then he's like, in Final Fantasy 9, some people liked. All right, let's talk about Final Fantasy 10. I'm like, excuse me? But, he product of his time, and I think he had certain influences. He talked, one other thing that kind of irritated me was when he talked about Dragon Quest, and he was really, really quick to gush on the Japanese developers, and rightfully so. There's so many great things they did, but he talked about how when they did stuff in Japan, it was super innovative, and then made a little comment like, "Oh, and Dragon Quest was heavily inspired by, like Ultima and Wizardry." Yeah. Anyway, so I'm like, okay, but that's like a huge American like Western influence that they're just completely glossing over, which makes sense. Like those little things, they're kind of all out throughout the book of just things that you can tell he's saying like, man, Japan's way cooler than America. And maybe that's his thought, but it's not exactly my thought on some of that stuff. So I disagreed with some of it. The way that he spoke about how they handle things, and Teddy's gonna correct me, I'm sure, but Akihabara, which is a huge shopping strip or area of in Japan, and they have had lots of used games stores and this really cool culture that apparently has been like eradicated at this point. It's just like a bunch of big block stores and stuff. But yeah, he talked about that, and I thought it was kind of interesting because he did get into the concept of used games, and apparently Japan had just a completely different take on what used games were than America did. And so they had all these kinds of rules. You couldn't even sell them until like 2002 or something. Really, really recent. where you couldn't they were considered like movies that you couldn't bootleg and stuff. It's weird, really, really weird. But again, they're different cultures, so they have completely different. It's just strange to think like they couldn't even have a Blockbuster there because. And it was also funny that to read that they're like, it's funny to read that they're like, oh, and, yeah, they could never have Blockbuster here, and I'm like, well, they don't have it here anymore either.
We have one. 2004.
Yeah, well, but it's definitely an interesting book. And I was very curious because I just feel like it was very, very focused on making sure Japan looked really good, and there was like at the very end of the book, like the very last, I guess you could say 2 chapters, although the last chapter in this was added after apparently this book was written or so. I don't know. It's like it says a bonus chapter, which seems odd. Maybe this book was already released and that was re-released. I'm not sure, but we got a bonus chapter in this about Iwata post mortem. But it was at the end of the book, they lightly touch on the fact that Western games are coming back in a really big way, and that Japan might be behind on this one, which is funny because like the whole book went the other way with it. But it's definitely an interesting read. I think maybe for more of the business purposes, it's more interesting, especially the Akihabara, right? Aki. Yeah, that chapter is really, really interesting. You get to learn a lot about their culture and a lot about some of the inner workings of why they do things the way they do. So that one might be more interesting than any of the chapters, which I was surprised by. I thought I would be most interested in the RPG stuff. They barely mentioned Chrono Trigger, so that was also a miss to me. But you definitely wanted to talk only about Final Fantasy VII, so there you go. Good book. Just understand it's heavily slanted, but it's a pretty good read.
What
about 300 pages.
What year?
Did the book come out?
Yeah.
I was trying to find that too.
I'll speak to it while he's looking at it, but since the book was like that last chapter is post-mortem, the book itself came out later, but I think there was a previous rendition of the book that was written pre-Iwata's death, and this is like a new version of that. Those, and I'll just speak to this briefly as kind of a correction, but kind of just more information. Power Up was the name of the journalism site, and he was an author for it, Chris Kohler. I don't know if that's like the name of the company or whatever, but like I think Power Up was the articles, etc. And they were written throughout time, like the early 2000s, etc. So that guy has some significance in terms of gaming journalism. I don't really know him. I don't know his work, but I thought the book was interesting.
Okay. I was kind of curious because you mentioned like 2016 or something.
Yeah, copyright 2005 and then 2016.
Oh, 2005. Okay, that makes more sense. I was like, because 2016, like the American gaming culture would have surpassed Japan for a while. Like there was a while where Japanese games were on the decline.
Yeah.
So I was like, wait a second, when was this book?
That's what you have to understand when you're reading it. And I picked it up about like 3 chapters in. It's like this thing is jumping around, and like these chapters are definitely written in different time frames because it's interesting the references they make.
Well, the Akihabara section is really fascinating because on the one hand, I think he's writing about it, like exploring it in the early 2000s, and then the post-chapter reflection talks about how there's been a massive decline in the video game culture in the same way that it was celebrated earlier, and how like the mid-2010s Akihabara is more about like I don't know exactly, like iPhone kind of like tablet computer and like, just like technology in general. So like, I think there is kind of an interest factor there. I do have a question, but I don't know if Alex, if you want to ask anything first.
Spencer. I'm just kidding. No, I don't have anything. I was going to say
Spencer.
Spencer.
Will you read me a bedtime story?
You be my friend. No, I mean, it does sound really interesting. I don't know if I have too many questions, but I do like books like that. I actually refrained from reading a book like this. Teddy sent me a couple, but because I thought that was the easiest go-to was to read a book like that. But I am interested in giving that one a read sometime. I have to finish the one Teddy sent me, which is the Ask Iwata book at some point. But yeah, Teddy, ask away.
Yay, I'm glad you picked this book, Spencer. I read most of it. That bonus chapter at the end is the only thing I didn't read. And it's sad because there's so many books I don't finish. So it's nice if I can even just finish one. And I had like 50 pages to go. And it's like, oh, no, I'm good. I did like parts of it, though. I think when you brought up the Donkey Kong bit, like that was definitely a standout moment for me, too. I think it's the 4-act structure because video games were replicating manga at the time. So you had panels and it went like from like first story, second story, third story, fourth story. And that was kind of the inspiration. So I learned something there. I don't know if you remember this during the Chrono Cross archive. I cited a couple pieces of information from this book about like the influence on like the music and like the just kind of like the I don't know how cool it was at the time. So I guess my question to you is like what were some of the most interesting pieces of information that stood out to you?
Well, definitely the Akihabara stuff was big. There was Alex, help me out on the name. It's the director of Shadow of the Colossus is like Ueda.
Yeah, that sounds right. I don't know how you say it, but yeah.
It's interesting hearing him talk because he got interviewed, but this is pre Shadow of the Colossus.
So it's Eiko.
Yeah, and which was a little disappointing because the picture in the front of this book has Shadow of the Colossus on it.
Wander,
but
or the
well, yeah, Wander with his horse.
Okay. Yeah, that horse.
But that's okay. I got to learn. It is funny because in the book he's like, and he's got a new game coming out that we're all excited for. End of chapter. It's like, well, all right. But no, that was interesting because he was all about movies, and he was more of like a visual guy, and then they just asked him to make a game, and it's really bizarre because it's kind of a miracle the Shadow of the Colossus even came out because the game was it was like the most. Not only was Ico unsuccessful, it was like the most unsuccessful game like ever at the time. It said within a year, the game dropped from it was already only being sold for $40 and wasn't successful then, and was dropped to $12 in stores. Like it was so like within a year, the game was just that. Nowadays, that kind of happens a lot, I think, because we just plow through games. But at the time, games held their value a little bit more than that. And so it was kind of surprising to see that series was even allowed to continue. That he was allowed to just... Because, like, monetarily, that seems like a horrible, horrible business decision.
Wait, have you seen the cover for the North American version of Ico? It's like a kid smeared in Vaseline. It looks awful.
I mean, that's has its own demographic. You know,
he specifically talked about that as he wanted it to look like you would notice it in front of other games at the time, and I guess he was successful in that they noticed that they didn't want to play it.
Yeah. Ugh. The fuck is that?
They talked to. I learned a lot about Argonaut and the Star Fox, the journey to get Star Fox out there, which was super interesting to know that they were able to get 3D working on the NES and the Game Boy. So apparently it was just like an unplayable mess, and they weren't making Star Fox at the time, but they were able to get 3D working on it, and they took those skills and put it on the Super Nintendo. And it's kind of disappointing because the two guys, I can't remember their names, but the two guys that were there, it talks kind of about their career after, and they're basically nothing, which is disappointing because they both showed so much promise. Like they developed the technology for Star Fox, and then they were brought over to Japan, and then they made like that amazing game. I mean, Star Fox on the Super Nintendo, it's not anyone's favorite, but it's still like an amazing piece of machinery, and the promise that it brought was so immense. And then they just both kind of floundered out. I think they both tried to do some stuff on their own. And one of them I even read, like it mentioned his company. I think it starts with a V, but he started this company, and of course the book, came out in 2005. And so he was like, and he said that he's working on this new project, and it's unlike anything you've ever heard of. Well, I Googled the company that he started, And they made like 5 games. And the first one was a DS game in 2007 that was like an underwater rhythm game. And they got way worse from there. It was like their company just was like a nothing. It was like VSN or something. I can't remember the name of it.
Wait, did they do the? No, they didn't do like the what's it called?
It's that launch
Fucking-
title, right? Like the music rhythm game. Like
Yeah,
it's
that's what I'm thinking. Hold
it's
on.
like a tech software. I can't remember the name either. I just played the thing. It's because
But
of
it
the
was-
F, maybe. I don't even know.
It was so I was like, oh my god, that's such a bummer. But I got the impression from some of these that he specifically put them in the book because he got interviews for it. Would be my guess.
Yeah.
Because he interviewed them, the Argonaut dude, I think it was an interview, and then he interviewed one of the dudes from Silicon Knights, which was also pretty interesting. But again, it's like I wouldn't necessarily consider that the staple of Japanese gaming is that they redid Metal Gear Solid. And then he's like, they did Eternal Darkness, which is,
That's
cool.
another company that would fall apart.
Yeah.
Like after 2 Human, they just fucking fell apart.
Yeah, it's very funny to read in like in a retrospect kind of way. And it was just weird. It's like, why did you put so much emphasis on the fact that they redid Metal Gear Solid? Like seems odd, like an odd choice to put in this book. But it was interesting. It was very interesting. So I liked hearing the behind the scenes stuff and some of the business decisions they made. So those would be the highlights to me.
Star Fox 2 is actually my favorite Star Fox. Just wanted to let you know. So there's some merit.
Yeah, apparently a lot of that got put into Star Fox 64. So it's almost like the same, it's not the same game, but a similar game. with
Yeah, a lot
ideas.
of that inspired Star Fox Zero as well.
And Command. And Command. I can't find the company you're talking about. I'm even looking like the Argonaut wiki trying to see if it'll link me. I'm trying to figure out if this is what me and Teddy are thinking of.
Vezient Inc., I think.
Vezient.
Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what came up on Google. I have it on my other computer, but I don't want to walk over there. I'm pretty confident it starts with a V. No, I don't think that's it. It's not that. That's like a healthcare company. Here, I can check real quick. I can run over.
Okay.
I'm trying to look up the launch titles to find the one I'm thinking of, and I just can't find it. Like Feel the Magic comes up. I'm like, that's not it.
Feel the magic. Dun, 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 dun. I don't know.
Wasn't there like that music creation game? But it's like you can't export your files.
Yeah. I was thinking of not it's not art style, but I was thinking of the games that are kind of like the art style games.
It's VITEI.
Okay. Hold on. VITEI.
I got a location in Connecticut. Aviti Construction.
I think I was right. Hold on. It sent me to a Nintendo. Steel Diver.
That's the special
wrong.
game. Yeah.
It was not what I was thinking of, but it's Theta.
That
That's the game we're talking about.
Theta.
Like
the Greek letter.
Yeah, it's not the game I was thinking about, but it is a Nintendo published title, which is cool.
Okay.
They did work on Steel Diver and Steel Diver Sub Wars.
Yeah.
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 and the definitely not sounding like garbageware Tank Troopers.
Or rock and roll climbers or something.
Rock and Roll Climber on WiiWare.
Funny. Argonaut would kind of fart out too. They made like Croc and Buck Bumble, and they were just like, all right, we've had enough career.
We did our job.
Are we done, guys? Yeah, I think so. I think we're done.
We made the Super FX chip. We're good. Enjoy Steel Diver.
Steel Diver. Something I was going to bring up, Spencer, is that I spend a lot of time watching and researching video game shit because I'm a fucking nerd. And I have a book that's Super Mario, the story of Nintendo. And I've read most of that book, and it's okay, except for the fact that like 55% of the time the guy's fucking wrong. Did you notice any of that in this book? Because when I was reading that Super Nintendo book, I would not recommend it. Or the Super Mario book, I would not recommend it because while reading it, there was just stuff that was just factually wrong, and I was like, "Isn't this your job to like if you're doing a book like this to try to make sure that you have the points down?"
I am naturally skeptical of everything that I read. I'll put that out there as a general thing, but there were, and again, it was written in 2005, so I give it some on some of these. Because I don't know everything. I know most things, but I don't know everything. In my reading of Dragon Quest facts, there's an old idea that they weren't allowed to release Dragon Quest on the weekends, or they had to release them on the weekends because when they released them during the week,
Calling to work,
it would cause people not to go to school, not to go to work, etc. I was under the impression that was a myth, but in this book they cite it multiple times as a thing that happened. Look, maybe that came out later that was a myth. I don't know. And maybe it isn't a myth. Maybe it did happen. But from what I've read, that is not true.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. Like I think the one that I was talking about the book mentioned the thing with Space Invaders where they had to like print new like money, like yen and stuff, and it was like that didn't happen. Like it wasn't like there was no shortage due to Space Invaders. It's a lie.
Yeah, actually, that was in this book too. So if that's the case, then there you go. There's another.
That's not true. That's been stated multiple times that is not true.
Oh gosh.
But again, maybe it was stated after it was written. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe it came out later or something. I don't know.
We had the disagreement on the Chrono Cross archive about what was the influence for the music, and in the book it says Celtic, and then like in the wiki it says whatever, like Irish or something. I don't remember exactly, but there was a discrepancy. So, but again, it's like how much are you willing to forgive? And also evaluate it. Like, I mean, with the Dragon Quest thing, it's like, what is he citing? I don't know.
Yeah, that any of that information may have come out later. So it's hard to say because maybe Mitsuda did an interview in 2007 or something, and then it's like whatever.
And maybe there was a school that did cancel for the week, or I don't know. Like maybe like
it's impossible to know. Yeah, you can't know. So I give it some leeway, but I'm just skeptical whenever I read anything. But some stuff you can prove, so cool.
You proved you read it. Good job, Spencer. Proud of you.
Thanks.
A proud co-host.
I had a really dark thought when Iwata passed away. I remember just thinking like maybe Nintendo will be good now, which is not a nice thing to say, but I think I was also right. But still, they definitely like the Switch was coming out and everything. So maybe he put that in motion. I'm sure he did or whatever. But it was interesting to read the last chapter about him. And also in doing this show, we talked about him a little bit with the Kirby stuff. Mm-hmm. So that also made it interesting to, in retrospect, to understand where he's coming from. And he had a lot of predictions about gaming that were actually pretty accurate, pretty on the money. It's just weird that he didn't act on some of it, of just like mobile gaming taking over and being such a big deal. Because it happened in Japan way earlier than in America. And it's just weird that he saw it coming and just did kind of nothing about it. He knew it was there, so that's interesting, but then just didn't do anything. I don't know. I thought that was curious.
Well, I mean, it's not like his last year of his life. Like, he was terminally ill. Like I don't know what he would have been able to like accomplish in those last years.
Well, I mean, it goes back to even. Well, I think about the Wii U launch mostly is where I think my brain is, and it's like, I'm noticing a trend that gamers here aren't really gaming that much anymore. They're playing on their phones. Well, what should we do about it? And he says, let's make a sequel to the Wii that is bigger because cell phones, are known for their massive size, and let's make it still a console. It's just like a lot of that stuff is like, if he knew the trends were going that way, why did he continue to push in the exact opposite direction? I don't know.
Yeah, it is kind of sad that like he'll forever be tied with the Wii U, but I mean he was tied to so many other successes though.
Mhm.
That it sucks that like that's the legacy he went out on is like the Wii U is the final console he was president for, really. Because he did so. I mean, he's partially successful for Pokemon success, and that's like the biggest media franchise in the world.
Oh, in the Pokemon chapter, he admitted that he only played it in like 2002. Like, come on,
Well,
dude.
like the original, like the first one.
The original Pokemon. I was like, dude, you're
Wow.
a little behind the ball.
Well, Brian is now playing it for the first time in 2022, so everyone's got different paces.
Head on over to I Got Kings and watch him play Pokemon. Was he doing Heart Gold? Heart Gold.
Heart gold, more like fart gold. He's taking Meganium to prom. Thanks, Spencer. That was fun.
Yeah.
You've really powered up this podcast.
Let's see if Alex can give it the fireballs that it needs.
Yeah. Now that we've gotten powered up, let's mutate. Hey, everybody. Hi, I'm Alex.
I'm Alex. Hey, Alex.
I'm here with my book report.
Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, so you can catch more awesome Ape Wild content. And then also, why don't you hit the notification bell so next time we release something ape shit crazy, you can listen to it immediately.